let's get into the World Championship format and why it is the way it is. I guess I should go over to the other tab first just to show it. Oh, God. We're already breaking stuff. Here we go. Okay. All right. So here's our groups. These are new groups that came out this weekend. And we've been working hard to get these groups accurate. But we're going to go over why the groups are the way they are. And I know a lot of people have qualms about like the G2 and the PSGs, you know, where they're the 3 seeds. And we'll get into that as we go through this. So yeah. Hibbs, what's up, man? How you doing, bud? So yeah, let's just go straight into it. I think we're good. I think everything's working okay. So I purposely wrote World Championship seeds for LeafX in honor of him. So we just separated out the champion and ship. That's why it's like that. And because I needed 2 headers because I'm going to make 2 lists because it's just a little bit easier. First, let's talk about how do you seed a World Championship in Season 7 compared to previous World Championships. So previous World Championships, obviously, like OCE kind of got the short end of the stick. They were brought along with the 4 seeds. Not necessarily the most fair way to do it, but that's the way it was. So let's talk about this first. Like, obviously, seeds matter because that's how they determine groups. So the way that I did it, and most of this is things that I helped Psyonix make for these groups and all that stuff for the seeding purposes and the bracket. It basically, like, I wrote a super long document, and this is what came out of it, and this is why it is. So if you have anyone to blame me. But let's go into it really, really quick. So the seeds for the tournament itself. Now, obviously, seeds are not going to be perfect. It's hard to examine that. A couple rules that you have to keep is you can't seed after teams have made it to the tournament or to the World Championship. You have to seed based off prior history. And that's how I did it, at least. So there was one caveat where we needed all number 1 seeds to have a top 4 seed. So that's what Psyonix wanted. So they wanted Sam to have a top 4 seed. Like, it wouldn't matter too much because probably where I would have had him was like number 6 anyway, because you have to reward the top seed from a new region. We haven't seen them play, so we don't know exactly where to put them. But it wouldn't have changed much. A 4 or 6 seed would have just flipped them in like a Cloud9 or something with low key down there. So that's not a huge deal. But we have them as the top 4 seed. So this is how the seeding worked for my stuff. Actually, I was hoping the numbers would copy over. That's annoying. So I'm going to have to write this out really, really quick. So basically, I based it off last season's World Championship with maybe a mixture of a little bit of history in previous seasons. So the number 1 seed is NA number 1 because Cloud9 won. So there you go. That's number 1. I might be able to copy and paste this. Hold on. Let me try this real quick. Okay. There we go. It's copy and pasted. I will put the numbers in real quick. Then EU number 1 because they came in second. Like, it doesn't matter what seed they were. It just matters where the region placed. So this is how you would seed. OC is number 3 because they want the top 4 seeds to be all the number 1 seeds for the regions. So the only seed that kind of got shafted maybe a little bit here is the Europe number 2 seed. They would have been the 3 seed in my book. Then OC would have been 4. Sam would have been 6. I would have had NA number 2 just above them. But again, not the end of the world. So if anyone got shafted, it's probably Europe number 2, but that's about it. But it's not that big of a deal. So moving on from that, we have 5 seeds there. So that would be your top 5 seeds in this tournament. Then you move on to the next grouping. I'm sorry, we need actually 6 on this side. My apologies. So we need 6. Then you have NA number 2. And this is basically just going off of last season's World Championship. There's obviously some ties in there, so you go based on prior history. It's mostly just Europe is always above NA for like the 2 seeds or the 3 seeds or the 4 seeds, except for the number 1 seed. Again, doesn't matter all that much because you have to mix and match anyway. Let's see if I can fit this in here. We might have to move this up just a bit. Yeah, we'll just do that. That's fine. Sorry for the bad editing. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do the same over here for the bottom 6 seeds. So let me get into that. So here we go. And these would be your bottom seeds. Now, 9 through 12 are basically the same. Like, you kind of just throw them into the groups like as they go, because you can't really place them that well. The most important thing to do in these groups, did I just do, okay, I just did that twice, is to have the top 8 all in separate groups, right? Like 2 in each, right? Because you want to get your top 8 to the bracket. So the last groups didn't have that, obviously. We had like a mixture of like 9 through 12 were in the same groups with one another. So that didn't really work out. So let's bring this up. There you go. So this is how the seeds would look. So OC would be number 11 because they've never won a series. Sam number 2 because they're a brand new region. You could flip those. It really doesn't matter for 9 through 12 because they kind of have to just be thrown into groups anyway. So now the other thing that's really important before you do groups is you have to make a perfect bracket. That is the most important thing with groups into a bracket, is the bracket, the seeds have to be perfect. So you need 1 versus 8, you need 4 versus 5 on the same side of the bracket, you need 2 versus 3, and you need 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6. That's the most important thing for competitive fairness. That is what you want to do. So this is where teams like G2 and PSG feel like they get shafted because they have to play the top dogs from both regions. Well, it's because they are the 7th and 8th seeds, where basically when we do groups, you don't want rematches going into the bracket. So you have to mix and match a little bit, where basically you just swap 7 and 8. So they play the number 1 and number 2, you know, and all that. So basically with the groups that we have right now, if you look at seed power, like if you add up all the seeds, the hardest group would be Group C, because of the OC number 1 and Europe number 2 are slightly better than SAM number 1 and NA number 2. So you have that. And then the next hardest group is Group D. And then we obviously need OC and SAM to be in Group A and B. So their groups are slightly less, powerful, I guess you would say. It's not a huge difference. It's like a seed power of 18 is the lowest by Group C, then 19, then 20, then 21. So it's relatively close. And once again, the groups, you need to have a mix of all regions. So basically that just means NA and EU, and then one of either OC or SAM. So this is exactly the same way that DreamHack does it, where DreamHack on day number 2, you have groups where you will have a 1 seed versus a 7 seed to qualify for the bracket if everything plays out. Then if the 7 seed loses and obviously goes in later on, they would then have to play the 2 seed from the bracket. So that's just the way it works for 7 and 8. But the most important thing that you can do is obviously have a clean bracket. The only problem with this is you want groups to be a mixture of regions. And this could turn into, you know, like an all NA side of the bracket or an all Europe side of the bracket when we get later on down the line. But that's mostly because if you want to separate the regions in groups, you're going to have to bring them back together in the bracket, if that makes sense. Because when you're swapping like a 7th and 8th seed, that is a G2 and PSG. So when you swap them back, obviously, they're going to play their counterparts from their own regions. It's just the way it kind of has to play out. That's probably the only weakness for this type of thing. But for fairness reasons, that's why you kind of have to do it. We're not talking about necessarily like the format for like changing it to other types of formats. Like this is a format to try and squeeze it into 3 days where we show every single game. So this is the format that we have. So the way the seeds work is based on, you know, what we have in store, right? So that's why that's how the seeds are. Now, the one argument people always have is like, well, Rogue and Triple Trouble technically have an easier side of the bracket. Not really, though, because they are the 3rd best teams in their group. So they have to upset someone. And then, sure, they have an easier side of the bracket for the quarterfinals. They get, you know, the 3 and 4 seeds. But it's like, that's how all brackets work. When you look at a bracket, if you have an 8th and 9th seed, yeah, the 10th and 11th seed technically have an easier side of the bracket. But they're playing teams that are harder the round before. That's just always how it works. So the 10th seed would play the 7th seed. The 11th seed would play the 6th seed. And sure, they play the 2 or 3 seed later, but they obviously were the underdogs. Like, that's just how every single bracket works. So it doesn't really matter in that case because I don't like understand that argument. Yeah, so basically the main thing here is the seeds are based on the previous World Championship. Like, I do wonder how we're going to do it next season, if this is the same way, because say Sam goes out, right? Say Sam goes out in both their groups. Then I think there is a precedent to say, hey, Sam, number one, doesn't get a top seed anymore for their groups. But again, we're kind of strapped with, like, we want all groups to have a mixture of regions, so it might not matter too much. They would have, like, one harder opponent probably. Like, they would probably have, like, a Europe 2 with Loki. But if Loki comes out of this, they'll have Europe 2 waiting for them anyway. So it's not, like, the end of the world. But if you guys have any questions, I'll take some questions before I think of anything else that I wanted to talk about in this. The other thing that I know people have been wondering is like, well, if Energy or Vitality get like upset, then they have to play each other in the quarterfinals. And I'm like, well, that's how brackets work. It's like G2 is basically trying to fight for that 2 seed from Vitality. So if G2 wins, they get the 2 seed. And again, this is exactly how DreamHack Dallas will do it as well. Like, obviously, groups of 4 teams, slightly different because of that. But when a team like Savage beats Cloud9 back at DreamHack Leipzig, they took over Cloud9's, I think, 2 seed or whatever it was. And then they get an easier matchup going into the bracket because they take over that seed because they won that group. It's just, it's just the way that works. What else let's see. If I have anything else, feel free to @ me for questions. It would be the easiest way to answer them. I'm just trying to think if anything else I'm missing here. The other thing was just, some people saying, like, Group A should play Group C, or, Group A should play Group D instead of Group A versus Group B going into the quarterfinals. One thing to keep in mind, you always want to separate, the 2 teams from the group on opposite sides of the bracket, so you can't have rematches until the finals. That's how, like, the World Cup does it, and they always match it to another group. But the reason why you wouldn't want to do that is then, like, Energy would then play, like, a Barcelona. And why would that be fair that Energy, or more for Barcelona's sake, why would Barcelona, like, as a Europe 2 seed, have a harder quarterfinal than PSG, the Europe 3 seed? So that doesn't make any sense for that reason, to have Group A versus Group C. That would just be unfair. So, like, the main point of this format is the bracket comes before anything else, right? The bracket has to be perfect, and then we go into groups, and you have to mix and match a little bit in groups because you don't want rematches. So the groups are not necessarily the fairest they can possibly be, but that's just because you never want rematches going into a bracket. But you always want the bracket to be perfect, and then groups just to be slightly off. It's not a big difference, obviously, 1 seed or another, because, people could argue that Energy is the 2 seed, Vitality is the number 1 seed, so it really doesn't matter all that much. But yeah, let's see. Okay. What's up, Lawler? How you doing, bud? So we're going to be a DreamHack prediction video. Yes, not right now, but there will be a DreamHack prediction video. Any thoughts on Sam? I haven't worried about them too much yet. I'm worried about DreamHack Dallas, and then I'll be looking into the Sam team, so I haven't watched them a ton yet. Hey, GG's Hot Shop. Do you think it's a good idea to have Sam number 1 as a 4 seed, consider that even EU and NA number 4 are probably better than them? We don't know that for sure. You can't disregard a region just right away. Like, you have to give them some type of bonus for being a number 1 seed, right? And I think that was a mistake in the previous format of, like, OCE as always being, like, that wild card and having to play that extra match, which I think was a slight mistake on that format's point of view, but it was, like, hard to integrate them because of how all the seeds played out. But at worst, I would have put them as a number 5 or 6. Like, I would put them at number 6. Just to have the 2 NA and Europe number 2 seeds higher than them, plus the OC number 1. And it wouldn't have changed all that much. Thank you, Saint Jimmy Skater, for the sub. Appreciate it, buddy. Almost a year, man. Thank you, buddy. 9-month streak, 11 months total.
Dang, almost a year.
Appreciate it, dude. But yeah, like, if you would have put Sam as number 6, that would have just basically... It would have been exactly the same, actually. Like, Cloud9, like, Europe 2 might have played them, but low-key would have been in Cloud9's spot. And then Europe 2 would have probably been 4th. Doesn't really change all that much. You might have seen Barcelona, like, hop over here, then Rogues over here instead. Like, these groups would have slightly changed, but not much. It wouldn't have mattered all that much in the grand scheme of things. Thoughts on franchising in RLCS? Like I'm always pro player. I get like franchising helps the esport more, but I've always been more pro player because I just don't want players to come in and then like half-ass a season, and the org's just like, well, these are our guys and they're going to continue to be our guys. Like that would suck. You would hope that wouldn't happen, obviously. But I'm always more pro player and let them accomplish. You know, like a promotion tournament's awesome when we get to see these players like accomplish getting into the league instead of the org just choosing the players. So I kind of like that. But I get franchising is better for the esport in general. All right. Didn't the pickup Sam team do decent at WSOE already? No, they went 0-4. It's good that they're not throwing Sam number 1 to the bottom. Yeah, like you have to give them somewhat of a bonus. Like Sam number 2, like for me, I have them as the 12th seed. But again, 9 through 12 really doesn't matter much because it's basically where can you fill these teams in, right? Like in this group, you have NA and EU. The only thing that you could swap is like Sam and OCE here in groups A and B. You could swap them. Really doesn't matter all that much, but that's about it, you know? So there's not much swapping happening. Same with Rogue and... same with Renegades and Loki. You could swap them, but if you did, then you get into that instance where the bracket isn't perfect. Because if Renegades, who is the OC number 1, moves over to the other side, they would play Cloud9. And they're supposed to play Cloud9 in the bracket if everything plays out perfectly. So that's why you don't have Renegades and Low-Key swapping, just because, you know. Like Low-Key, like if they win their group, they play Barcelona, which makes sense. Like Sam would be the number 4 seed. Then Barcelona would be the 5th seed if they come in second, obviously. And then that would be the race for the 4v5 and the perfect bracket once again. Afterthought got 1-3 at WSOE, beat Chiefs. Yeah, Afterthought is not the same team, but yes. If you guys have any other questions about these groups or the format, let me know. But once again, just to reiterate, I think the schedule, the way it is mostly to not have a team get eliminated on day 1. So teams like... it could happen, obviously, but that's why you have like 1 and 2 playing each other first, because you expect them to not lose later on in the day. Like G2 technically could get eliminated if they go 0-2 on day number 1, but by the way the groups work, that shouldn't happen. G2 actually gets a pretty decent advantage too. Like the number 1 and 2 seeds get a pretty big advantage like in their groups because they play first at LAN, right? So out of order and ints, they have a big disadvantage playing a team that's already warmed up. Sure, they might have lost or something, but they played on stage, and we've seen that before. Take last season, it was like Dingtas versus EG was really close because EG already played. Energy has always complained about being the number 1 seed because they have to play a team that's already played on stage. So that's kind of why you have the first 2 going first. It just gives a bigger advantage to the top 2 seeds because they get to get those nerves out, and then they get to play the 3rd seed in their group when they're still worrying about their nerves. You could change who plays that 3rd seed in that game, but besides that, it's not the end of the world. Do I still have the best position? And hey, no, absolutely not. I just ball chase. Like when I play ranked, I just ball chase. Hold on. Let's see. What else did I miss? Any thoughts on play times? I thought this format was kind of limited by the 3 days of stream time. Yeah, like obviously, I would prefer a longer format and more days, but this is what we are dealt, and so this is what we have to work with. But it's a ruthless format, that is for sure. You can't make any mistakes in this one. But once again, like I would rather, a 4 or 5 day format where we get more international games and people get to, have more of a chance to make comebacks and stuff like that. But I don't mind this because it's the pinnacle. It's like the pinnacle of the season. Like it's like playoffs. It's like in football. Like in playoffs, you play one game, and if you lose, then you're out. So it's not the end of the world. But I would prefer a couple more games. Gibbs, feed my G2 fanboy and tell me that they will do well. Hey, Path, you don't want to talk to me then. All right. If we got any other questions, let's see what we got here. Do you think allowing teams in RLCS to forfeit could improve the viewer experience? No, like I don't. Like, I guess, but it kind of ruins, like, player stats and all that stuff. And I get, like, overtimes also ruin those stats, but I don't know. The one thing that I didn't mention is groups, tiebreakers. Really quick, is tiebreakers are completely ruthless. Like, it could come down to goal differential. So, in the case of a World Championship, you do not want to forfeit. Or, well, I guess you would want to forfeit when you lose 1-0 if you were worried about goal differential. But, basically, it works. It's game differential because everyone plays 2 series, right? So the only way there's a tie is everyone goes 1-1-1 or 1-1. And if that happens, it goes down to game differential. But say all those series are sweeps or all those series are game 5, then everyone has the same game differential. Then it comes down to goals scored. So that is where you want to, or I'm sorry, goal differential, not goals scored, but. So in games like where you're down 3-0, you might not necessarily go ham with 1 minute left anymore because you're just not sure if that could hurt you if you give up 4 more goals like in that last minute because everyone's just going ham and trying to score. So you got to be a little bit worried about that. Are the groups best of 5? Yes. Will we ever experiment with a run and score rather than best of total score after 3 or 4 games? I don't think so because you just lose the hype. It's kind of like in season 1 when we had a like series of 5 games, and sure, like you get more out of it, like everyone plays 35 games, and then you're then it's probably more accurate, but it's not as hype. Like no one cares like after a team goes up 3-0 or like 4-0 who wins that 5th game. So there's always a balance of like competitive integrity, production quality, hype, and cost, right? So there's always those 3 balances. And obviously, like, competitive integrity is usually that one that, you know, you want to hit probably the hardest, but you have to keep the hype up as well, right? So it's a close number 2. So that's probably why we wouldn't do that, because most games wouldn't come down to the end, and they would just be boring. When we see, like, a 4-0 game with a minute left, it's boring, right? So we wouldn't want that over 20 minutes where it's like, all right, they're up 12-2 with 8 minutes left. Like, no one's going to care, right? Yeah, so groups are best of 5, though. And then quarterfinals for the playoffs are best of 5. And then best of 7s for semis and finals. There is no third place game. So like day 3 has the entirety of the bracket. The bracket's right here. Group A, Group B, you know, all that. So best of 7s and semis and finals. And that's just because it's a pretty long day. Personally, like I would prefer just best of 7s and just go longer. But, you know, sometimes you have to get out of the venue at a specific time and all that stuff. So you just have to make sure that you know, are keeping everyone's time in order. Let's see. Did you guys consider doing a tiebreaker match since groups are so small, or was time too little for this to happen? You can't really do a tiebreaker match because, like, everyone's going to tie. Like in groups of 3, the only way people tie is if all 3 tie. Then how do you break that tie, right? There is no way to break that tie. You would have to have all 3 play each other again, which there's absolutely no time to do that. So you go goal differential. The only thing I would like, I'm not sure exactly how it works after goal differential. It might be like goal differential versus like the team that wins, you know, like the highest placed team, like after goal differential. But if everyone ties, then like, I don't know exactly what happens. Maybe it's like you just pick names out of a hat, which would kind of suck, but like, how else do you do it, right? Like, I would rather see like 1-goal games, right? It's like, all right, whoever scores first wins this game or something like that. But it would be hard because you have to get everyone on stage and everyone has to set up, and it would take forever, you know, and all that stuff. So you just hope that doesn't happen, basically. Would you rather have more games even if we don't see them at all? No. I would, like, to me, the World Championship, you need to see every game. And you need to see every game on the big stream, you know? Because every other game that this team plays throughout their season is shown, like on their stream. Like, it's the main focal point. So it'd be really weird that after their whole journey of playing 9 series or so, like maybe 10, depending on their playoff bracket, then we don't see them when they have a really important game, or we see them on a B stream. to me, I feel like at the World Championship, everyone needs to play on stage for every single match. And sure, that does hamper you a little bit, but I think that's the most fair way to go about it, personally. Can we potentially see 2 games around the same time for day 1? Not this time. Like, maybe at some point we do that, but not here. And again, personally, I wouldn't want to see it that way. Personally. Goal differential after game differential. That's how it is. Well, it's not exactly how it is in league play. Like, league play, you go game differential from the highest ranked team down, and then it goes goal differential. So you'll never see goal differential in league play, basically. But there is no other way to do it here. So it's going to be fun to watch because, like, those first series, it is very important. Like, if someone wins 8-1, it could be huge for that one game to matter for like tiebreakers, right? So it could matter a lot. It would suck to have teams not playing on mainstream. I agree, Time. I agree. Like, I think we've watched them all season, and fans, there's fans of every one of these teams, right? So you want to see them do that. So you want to see them on the big stage all the time. I'm not sure the exact reasoning behind quarterfinal being best of 5, but it's probably a time issue, you know. Like, I would prefer best of 7 too. Like, I don't think it's the end of the world, but I would prefer best of 7. But what is it? I can't remember the exact stats, and that's only if it's like coin flips. Like, it's still relatively low percentage that the series flip the other way. I have a video on it, so I don't know the exact numbers, but there is a video where I do like, hey, does it really matter between best of 3, best of 5, and best of 7? And it's relatively low percentage, and again, that's only if it's a coin flip. And most of the time, if someone's in the lead in the series, they're generally the better team. So you would have to make those percentages even smaller. I hope so I can manage more than 3 days to RLCS. That would be hype and would make much more interesting championship. But again, for what we have now, this is really good. Yeah, like I hope in the future we get to that point. That'd be really cool. Have 4 or 5 days or 2 weekends or something like that. Like 2 weekends would be really, really hard. Like obviously the costs go up tremendously when you add more days to a world championship. But, you know, of course, if money's not an issue, I would always want, you know, more, right? So. Let's see. What's up, Grams? How you doing, bud? All right. It's really hot down here. I'm basically sweat. I think that's basically it. Let's see. Dr. Swag. Given the limitations, I still dislike the seeding into the playoff bracket. I don't like how the first match is forced to be Group A versus Group B or Group C versus Group D. How else would you do it? Like, the only other way would be you, like, randomize the 1 seeds and the 2 seeds. And basically the way that works would be like, all right, like, Energy comes out as a 1, PSG comes out as a 2. When you pull names out of a hat, like if Energy's on top side of the bracket, PSG has to be on the lower side of the bracket, but it's randomized where they go to. But it is proper seeding, right? Like, we want perfect seeding going into the bracket. And these teams like PSG or G2 who feel like they might have a tough bracket, well, it's like, hey, you had all season to fix that, but you guys came in 3rd, right? So this is your seed. Like, you know, you are a 7th or 8th seed at this tournament. Just the way it is. Not doing predictions for RLCS before DH. See what you're doing here. We are... Oh, no. Yeah, we're not going to do predictions here. No way. We have to wait for everything to play out. And, you know, like, I always do my World Championship predictions, like, the week of anyway. Because I always feel like doing them early just kind of seems weird. And, like, then people forget about them. And, like, there's more hype building up to that last week. So, I always do them at the end. All right, I think that's going to do it. So this is why the format is the way it is. To me, in terms of groups of 3 into a bracket, this is as perfect as you can get it. And if you don't agree with me, well, you're wrong. No, but it's a pretty decent way to do it. Obviously, it's ruthless, and obviously there's not a lot of time to get a lot of games in. But I am very excited to see how this all plays out. It's going to be a lot of fun to see South America come in. I would love to see them have both teams make bracket or something, and then everyone shuts up about Sam being super weak. That'd be awesome. Always rooting for those underdogs, except for Renegades. I can never pick them, so that's just the way it is. So Renegades will be eliminated from Group C. But that's going to do it for the format talk.